It says, for those of us with multiple worship styles on one campus, what insights can you give specific to traditional worship? So, Paul, maybe just talk about what it's like for you to go into a setting where you are mixing an organ or a choir, or you're going to have to do a string section or something like that, as opposed to contemporary worship, which is in a lot of our
Sure.
churches today.
Yeah. Well, I would use the example of the, the when I was learning studio recording in the late '80s, and I'd always liked classical music, but never had recorded any. And the first time I mic'd a string section for it was for a pop album, but the first time I mic'd a string section, I was so used to miking for pop bands that I mic'd every violin and every cello and every viola, and uh, and the players were going, this is bizarre because every time we've recorded like high-end albums, they use like two or three mics for our whole section, and I didn't really get that until then, and uh, and so I think traditional worship is the same way, as opposed to mixing a pop band where you're miking every little thing and you're getting separation on every little thing. When you're mixing traditional worship, you need to think about more space. And so, because clearly you're not miking the pipe organ is organically happening in the room, and it takes the whole room to develop its sound. And if you have a string section, the same is true. You mic off that string section with two or three mics, and let the string section and let the air and the space help develop that sound. And then the same for a choir, rather than them all being on individual mics, which is crazy as it sounds. Sometimes we have to do that in a rock setting when it's really loud. Um, but you want to mic them, ideally a choir with two mics, uh, 8 feet away from the choir, two mics. But these things can only happen if there's not a drum set 5 feet away and there's not an electric guitar amp 2 feet away. So you want to think more space and mics further away for traditional worship. And then you'll have your maybe a one lead singer that even then again, they're not on the mic in this rock and roll way, which is really aggressive. They're off the mic in a real Pavarotti-ish way, which is a terrible example. But the point is, they're away, and there's space, and so you don't get all the sibilance and attack that you get when you're miking for a pop style. I don't want to go on and on, but I think that's the biggest thing to think of is to have space and let the molecules of the room do some of your mixing.